Thank you, Jolene. The next part of our service will be some reflections from some of our community, members of our community, about events taking place outside the walls of our congregation, just at least a sampling of some of the things from which we can benefit by being members of this community. I'm not sure everyone's... are we here, all here? Okay, good. The reflections will be given by Shirley Adams on Regional Assembly, by Steve Sarakaku on the General Assembly in Spokane, by Peg Bocard on attending the General Assembly from off-site, by Barb Bursino and Jonathan Spachalski on the Midwest Leadership School, and by Lucinda Lauder on the Journeys trip to Boston this year.
Good morning. So I have had some magical moments at regional assemblies, and some of you have too. But I decided to give you just a little bit more of an inclusive view of denominational affairs. As Jolene was saying when choosing the song, what really comes to your mind when you hear that phrase, denominational affairs? It sounds a little bureaucratic. Sounds a little vague. And I think if I were to invite you to come to a committee meeting for denominational affairs, you might say, I'd rather light my hair on fire. But there are a half dozen of us or more who find it very exciting and intriguing. A bunch of them are here right now. Linda LaPlante and Lee Banner, Peg, Betty Walker is here somewhere. And Michelle Novak. In fact, Michelle created this list. So one of the first ideas we had was, how do we tell you about all the wonderful things that are outside these walls? So this is a first blush. Every one of you got one. Some of you know a lot about all of it. Some of you will find lots of new information there. So let me just tell you, of course, I thought about why I am involved with denominational affairs, and I want to say I'm a bit of a UU junkie. There are a bunch of UU junkies in this room, I know. I actually subscribe to extra email lists in addition to ours, like on church membership issues, on finance and raising money and spending money, a general leadership listserv, and I get to talk to people all over the United States who are also UU about all these interesting things. And you can too, because all you do is go to the UUA website, look for a listserv you're interested in, and sign up. Now, when I travel, and I bet a bunch of you do this, don't you look for a UU congregation and visit them to see how they do things? And I even sign up for their newsletters. I get 5 of them right now. and people do things similarly to us, but they also do them very differently. A bunch of you already give money to a couple of the things on this list, 2 or 3 more likely. The prison ministry, the UU prison ministry, the service committee. I mean, how are you going to give money internationally that does more good than the UU service committee? The Advocacy Network for Illinois. That group has allowed a bunch of us in this congregation to actually visit our representatives at the state level and even the federal level, and they know who UUs are, and they respect our opinions when we ask them to support issues. We're always so proud, of course, of our programs from UUA. One of them is Side with Love, and I saw a yellow shirt here today, a Side with Love yellow shirt. Yeah, a couple of them. When you're at a march or you go to Springfield and you look around and there are these yellow shirts that essentially say, I'm a UU for social justice, it makes you feel good. How many of you have a whole bunch of Skinner Press or Beacon Press books on your bookshelf, right, or by your bed? You can tell I keep going back to some of them because they're just such gems. And I want to mention one last thing, and that is, aren't you all hoping that our search committee will find a minister that is just going to be so darn good and such a wonderful match that this person may never want to leave us? Well, the UUA helps the search committee find a minister. I don't mind at all that part of the pledge we make to UCE, UUCA was my church in Atlanta for 30 years, to UCE, part of our pledge goes to the Chicago chapter of UU's to keep us connected here. Part of it goes to the regional, well, the national level, and then they send money back. Some would say they trickle a little money back down to the regional assembly. One of the things that you're going to hear from people who've traveled to do things with the denomination, and one of the things the Denominational Affairs has worked on is how do we make scholarships available so that it's accessible, possible for people without a lot of their own personal funds to be able to do some of these exciting trips. So that's part of what the Denominational Affairs does. So I just wanted to tell you that everywhere I go, I'm reassured when I see that there are groups of other Unitarian Universalists that meet and that do this same kind of worship and service that we do. And without that web across this whole nation, I would feel pretty isolated. So I hope that you will look at this list and you will find something in this list that you can participate in that makes you feel more alive, more connected, and more powerful than we can possibly be as one congregation. And if we ever invite you to a Denominational Affairs team meeting, I hope you'll at least stop and think about coming and joining us. You can even Zoom in. We meet in person or by Zoom now. We're pretty tech savvy. So let me make sure I don't take anybody else's papers away. And now you're going to hear from Steve Sirikaku about Spokane.
So good morning. I love going to GA, General Assembly. To be in a room of 3,000 to 4,000 UUs is so uplifting. The past 2 years especially so. This year's theme was the power of we. And the love in the room, both at the opening and the closing ceremonies, was palpable. And who doesn't want that? General Assembly is where the Unitarian Universalist Association holds its annual business meeting / conference. So key decisions are voted upon, and education on current issues and sharing of experiences, are also included. And we UUs love to learn and share. There are groups of programs aimed at different audiences, from clergy to lay leaders to average members. Most of the sessions are excellent, and a lot of them are geared toward young adults and youth now, which is great. The democratic process is taken very seriously. You can see it here, and you can see it at GA. Debate is built into the process of making decisions, as well as making sure that everybody is informed. Online participation, as Peggy will talk about, is available since the costs and time involved in attending GA make it inaccessible to many. Now, the UUA has taken on the task of dismantling white supremacy culture to heart. Virtually every religious service addressed it, as well as many of the workshops. Most of the clergy leading services were people of color, And they did not hold back much of their frustration with a denomination that has disappointed them in the past. But the audience was receptive. You know, the level of knowledge and commitment has greatly increased over the past few years. And it made me proud to be a UU. You know, I felt that there's hope for the future with so many intelligent, well-informed people living out their values out loud. There was always a demonstration of solidarity with local organizations in the host city addressing social justice. And this year, several hundred of us gathered in a park near the convention center to oppose the building of a new jail. A local activist was moved to tears because she had never seen that much support from the local community. So if you were looking for a way to become more optimistic about the world, to join fellow comrades who are living out their values, and you can afford the travel and the time, I highly recommend GA. And, you know, in 2021, it's going to be in Milwaukee. So if I were you, I'd plan now. You know I plan to be there. So.
Morning, everyone. Well, as Steve was saying, there is nothing like the experience of actually being at General Assembly. I have been involved with every General Assembly since 2006, except one last year. And involved in that, I have also been an off-site delegate 4 times. Now, in association with that, let me just mention as an aside, if you want to see what General Assembly is like, both the major events, the plenaries, which are what the governance sections are called, and some of the more important workshops, you can actually go to www.uua.org/GA, and you can actually look at those. In fact, you can look at the tapes right this minute. I was there this morning, actually trying to see if there was any chance I could get to the old off-site delegate site. I couldn't, so I will have to tell you about it. But the fact is, those run live while they're actually happening. You can be there, you can be part of the excitement, sitting in your own chair. In fact, if you choose to be an off-site delegate, you can register as an off-site delegate. The price is substantially less if that is a big issue. And you can go to, you receive a special URL to get to a special version of the website. You get a password so only you can get in. That will give you access to the same video that's happening that everybody can see, but you will also get access to the voting block, the voting frame, and you'll get access to the off-site delegate only chat box, where there's an awful lot of interesting discussion that goes on via text. I did that this past year. And it was actually really quite worthwhile. I was actually one of the people who voted on all those issues. The only thing I had to deal with is the fact that I had to live 2 hours later in my day than I'm used to. But it was a wonderful thing. Now, so anybody who has a computer, can actually on this, so much for that request, you can bring up that website, you'll see the box, you'll see a voting box, which you can actually move to another part of your screen. You'll see, thank you, I'll hang it on my arm. You can see the chat box, which you move to another part of the screen if you want, and you can actually work with all those things interactively. I happen to have 2 computers and 3 screens, so I can spread things out pretty nicely. So over here, I have the agenda, and over here, I have the actual active window of the what's going on, and over here, I have the chat box and the voting screen. It can be just as exciting, even though you aren't actually surrounded by 3,000 other people. It's really a good thing to do. So think about that. We are allowed to have 9 delegates at both the General Assembly and the Regional Assembly every year. We had 3 regular delegates, of which I was one and I was not there. Steve Sarakaku was another, Heike Enghart was another, and Eileen is behind me, was one of the ministerial delegates. Was anyone else there? Well, I actually saw Heike and Steve and Eileen. Who else was there? That was it. Oh, what a shame. Any of you can join. You can come. You can be an off-site delegate. Now, I'm going to take a couple extra seconds and also mention that there is something called the Regional Assembly. The Mid-America region of the UUA also has an assembly of delegates from congregations in the Mid-America region, which encompasses congregations from Ohio all the way west to the Dakotas and south to, I don't think we're quite Oklahoma. Yes, we are. So we have access to a lot of people. This usually lasts, about a day and a half or 2 days. It involves worship. It includes keynote speakers. Last year, in fact, it was Susan Frederick Gray was a keynote speaker. It involves workshops, just as you do at General Assembly, not quite as many as they have at General Assembly, which has a 50-page booklet. Thank you. I have just been told that I've got to stop chatting. So anyway, on to Midwest Leadership School.
Hi, good morning. My name is Barbara. I experienced our Unitarian Universalist Midwest Leadership School last month during the week of July. We were at Luther College in Decorah, Iowa. Attending leadership school were about 40 adults and 30 high school youths who are UUs and live in the Midwest region. It was an incredible week filled with learning, problem solving, feeling deeply, playing games, making new friends, and connecting to my UU faith. Every day we had a morning and an evening worship service, which were brief gatherings consisting of readings, songs, and inspirational music. During the day, we had 3 intensive sessions, about 2 hours each. In the morning, we had lectures. In the afternoon, we had problem-solving session. And after that, we had our credo meetings. The lectures were taught by 3 passionate and knowledgeable ministers who spoke about topics such as the history of Universalism and the history of Unitarianism and how they became linked together to create our UU values and principles. Some of the many topics we learned about were inclusivity, compassionate communication, dismantling systemic white supremacy, microaggressions, marginalization, and many more important topics. Our congressional systems time was about brainstorming and problem solving and gave us the opportunity to work together in small groups and incorporate our strengths and challenges and practice working on some real-world congregational issues. Our credo groups were a small gathering of 6 of us where we shared our deepest thoughts and feelings about our individual beliefs. In the evening, after a long day, we had social time to get to know each other, play games, and get silly. For me, social time usually ended around midnight. The days were long and intense, but very satisfying. The most important thing I learned about myself is that I love being a UU because I'm continuously invited to be a better person. During my leadership week, through lectures and through the extraordinary people I met, I was challenged to confront my experience of privilege and power, and it made me want to do better, to do more, to be better and be more. The most interesting part of this leadership experience was spending time with some truly remarkable people. I had the honor to get to know other people's stories and lives with a depth and intimacy that would typically take months or even years. I'm grateful to have had this experience. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jonathan, and I recently finished my leadership training at the Youth Midwest Leadership School. In just 1 week, I learned so much about what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist, UU beliefs, and the 7 principles. I was also inspired to learn more about what our church is doing to stand up for marginalized groups and promote justice. We learned about a variety of different topics throughout the week, such as environmental racism, microaggressions, privilege, identity, how to be a good listener, and how to appreciate the ideas of others. I also learned some important things about how to be a leader. We learned how to run an effective meeting, and we planned a party. We had to split up into committees, assign group roles, and work together to plan the food, decorations, games, and activities for our party. In the end, it was a success, and everything went as planned. We also talked about what defines a leader and what leadership is. Could anyone be a leader? Are we all leaders in our everyday lives? What do you have to do to be a leader? We decided that a leader could be anyone that works well with others, helps them out, and is kind and compassionate. A leader is anyone who makes a difference in other people's lives. We explored our own beliefs in our credo groups. We got some time to think deeply about the prompts, and then we talked in our small groups about our beliefs, thoughts about the past, the future, our identities, and personalities. We also talked about what worship meant to us in our spirituality groups. We even did a small group singing worship, which was really cool. Overall, I really enjoyed my time at the Youth Midwest Leadership School. I met some great people, had a lot of fun, and learned so much about Unitarian Universalism and leadership.
I've been asked to speak about the youth trip to Boston this past May. The most amazing part about it for me was the historical atmosphere there. Everywhere you looked, there were statues of famous writers, thinkers, or activists. It was so cool to watch our leader, Mary, point to so many of them and say they were a Unitarian. Everything we passed seemed to have a history to be learned. We spent time in Boston Commons, at Walden Pond, and at Harvard Chapel, where Ralph Waldo Emerson gave his famous Harvard Divinity School address. This is the address in which he said we shouldn't rely on dead texts like the Bible, but instead on inspiration from direct experiences, an idea so controversial that it got him banned from Harvard for 30 years. All of these places echoed history, and for someone like me who loves studying history, it was awesome. I was even inspired by our hostel. It was such a modern, eco-friendly building that I felt like I was standing in the future. And since all of my credo work made me look toward the future, this building was pretty exciting. Splashed across the walls in giant text were quotes from famous writers about how travel had changed them, like this one from Mark Twain: "Travel is fatal to prejudice." Each floor was decorated with a different color. Our floor was green, and it was so spacious that every time I stepped off the elevator, I felt like I had space to breathe. There was also any activity your heart could desire in the hangout space downstairs: pool, chess, video games, and 1,000-piece puzzles. I think the greatest part about it was that every morning the hangout space was filled with people who seemed barely over 20, all working on something and speaking different languages. What could be more exciting than that? We were traveling in a group, which was something that I was not used to. We all got to learn something from each other. Everyone had fresh ideas and different viewpoints. We had to get a huge van anytime we wanted to go anywhere far, and there was never a moment of silence while we were awake. I remember on our first full day there, we had just finished walking around Boston Commons, and everyone was sitting and resting. All was quiet. Then Daniel and Rex found an apple on the ground. It was mere seconds before they were tossing it around and dropping it. The apple was flying into little bits in the air, and Chloe and I ran into the action to steal the bits as they fell. The apple was utterly destroyed. Right at that moment, Jake fortunately pulled a bit of purple clay out of his backpack, and soon we had made a ball with it. For the rest of the trip, we brought it along with us everywhere we went, tossing it back and forth among us in free moments. This little clay ball fell apart over and over, but we always managed to put it back together, kind of like us as a group. Our trip wasn't the only amazing part of this year. Our classroom time prepared us for everything that we would see in Boston. We learned about the historical figures whose homes we would visit. We learned the history of UU activism, and we learned so much American history through it. We specially studied the history of social justice in America and how Unitarians stepped in to support the movement. You heard from my classmates at the Credo service. Their bravery and plans for the future helped me to strengthen mine. You've never heard a more wild and supportive crowd than my classmates when everyone first practiced delivering their credos in class. We were scared that we hadn't articulated a point correctly, or that something was going to go wrong in the service. Sometimes our nerves got the best of us, but we got through our credos together. Lastly, I want to thank all of you for supporting our coming of age and our trip. It makes us all stronger to have people believing in us. Everyone has stopped calling us kids and started calling us youth. The responsibility that comes with that new word feels fantastic. I visited the places where some of America's greatest people became who we know them as now. They've inspired me and given me strength to be what I want to be. I know all of my classmates got a lot out of this year. So, in summing up, I would say that we came to understand the history of Boston, what it means to be a UU, and each other. We learned that when the apple flies apart, you gotta find the purple clay. Thank you.